Has it ever happened to you that in the middle of the night you start hearing these strange sounds and you feel, is somebody in my house? I'm here to tell you that this happened to Ben, a graphic novelist who moved into a new house with his daughter and his dog, and suddenly he kept feeling like something strange was happening. He kept hearing noises, some unnatural stuff suddenly started happening around the house, and initially he wasn't too worried about it, but when it started impacting his daughter, that raised some eyebrows. Don't worry, this is not a real story. I'm talking about a book called Someone Died in My House by Meg Howald. It is a mystery, horror, thriller, a mixture of many genres, but it is a book that I highly, highly recommend for people who like psychological thrillers, for people who like horror that is not too gory, and for any reader who wants that thrill and mystery combined with an interesting plot. Let me tell you a little bit about the story and then we'll come to what I thought about the book. Also, if you didn't notice by now, there's something playing in the background, right? Throughout this video. This is the book's trailer. Let me show you. Ben is a graphic novelist. Like I said, he moves to a new house with his young daughter Annie and his dog Vinci. And suddenly after moving into the house, unnatural stuff, paranormal stuff starts happening. When you move into a new house, of course, you want everything to go okay. But if something like this happens, what do? Initially, he did not worry much. He was getting nightmares. He was like seeing random stuff around the house. There were many unexplainable events happening around the house, and you know how you can never pinpoint and like figure out, oh, why is this happening? Am I only imagining this? So he was going through that phase, but suddenly when these incidents start affecting his daughter, then he starts taking it more seriously. And here comes two more interesting characters who join the storyline and make it even more interesting. One of them is Rose and another one is Joseph. But what you need to know about Rose and Joseph are like, these are people who are experts in understanding paranormal stuff. Rose, she can tell the history or the story behind any object after touching it, and Joseph is a physicist and also a paranormal researcher. So both of them have expertise in figuring out when a paranormal incident is happening somewhere as to what is the cause behind it, how could you improve the situation, and essentially they are there to put the pieces together and make the puzzle complete. Here's the twist. This story is not just a horror novel though. It also has elements of love in it, which you really don't expect from a psychological thriller. And it's not like those superficial kind of romance just sprinkled in for the book to be made like more palatable for readers who do not read books without a hint of romance in it. It is actually important to the story to showcase that love story. Now I told you a little bit of background about what the story is going to be about. Let's talk about what I liked, what I didn't like, and what amazed me. The novel's strengths lie in the way it is able to create that feeling of dread. And if you're reading it in the middle of the night, I swear it's gonna be on your nerves. You're gonna be so scared because it creates that tensions when you're reading. This descriptive writing is enough to give you a sense of what the characters are actually going through, especially with Ben and his nightmares and other incidents that were happening around the house. It creates like that eerie kind of feeling that really creeps up on you and sends a chill down your spine. So I really love that, because there are many horror novels that I've read in past, and they're unable to, like, some of them are unable to create that kind of atmosphere in a reader's mind, and until you do that, it's not really like thriller or horror. So I really liked the writing and the descriptive part of it. But another thing I really adored was that in most part of the book, the author allows dialogues to be the ones that are driving the story ahead. Like, you understand the perspectives of the characters and you understand what how the story is going to go ahead through dialogues instead of just descriptive writing, which I feel is so essential, because you cannot relate to a character until and unless those dialogues are there. I especially liked Ben's best friend Mark, like, special mention, because he had like hilarious inputs, but it was just something about his personality. When he said something completely off the bat, it fit in with the story still and it made you chuckle. So that is something that I really, really adored. The second thing was the way these characters are presented in the story. Each of them have like their inner turmoils and their own stories that they're dealing with. So on one part there is this like overarching plot that is about this house, somebody has died, and figuring out the story. But on the other hand, all these characters have different layers, and when you're reading the story, those layers are being peeled off, and you get to know more and more about the different characters and their backstories, and develop an understanding of where they come from. And I really like when that is done in a book, because it really helps you connect with the characters more. And when you connect with the characters more, then you have a real stake in figuring out what happens to them. Like, if you are not relating to a character in a horror movie or elsewhere, you don't care if they die, right? But once you start developing that understanding about that character, oh, this is something he has gone through in his life, oh, this is something he's struggling with right now, then that makes you more vulnerable to shocks and awe, which is really, really necessary in a thriller and mystery novel like this. The other thing, like I mentioned, is that since this book is a mixture of genres, the author really uses those psychological thriller tricks to trick you. Ben turns out to be an unreliable narrator in between, because he cannot distinguish between reality and imagination at different points in time. You can't tell if this is something that's really happening to him or if this is just a nightmare. And that blurred reality is something that creates a very surreal kind of atmosphere, and I really loved reading about it. I mean, I am a fan of magical realism for this reason only, that I really like reading books that blur that line between something that could be real and something that is completely fictional or imaginable. Another thing about this book that you should know is that it's a slow burner, so you will not get those random moments in which something just like pops up and you're surprised. It really goes slow, and it allows you to understand at least the premise first, and then try to comprehend the situation at hand, and then new characters are introduced, so you get to know the characters as well, and slowly the entire plot progresses. But it's not boring at all, which I really appreciate. Through one thing or the other, the author tries to maintain this tension, which allows you to like keep turning the pages. There was not a point in the book where I felt like, oh, I can put this down now and maybe come back to it later, because it all had me feeling like, oh, I need to read this right now and figure out what is going to happen to these characters. The second thing is that the addition of multiple perspectives, whether it was through Dr. Joseph or Dr. Rose, really adds depth to the story, because they brought their own fresh perspectives, and it helped you understand the entire story in much more depth than I would have just from like Ben's perspective. Some of the things that I really found like unnerving at points were that Ben's daughter, like she's 10-year-old, she's supposed to be 10 years old, but some of the dialogues actually made her sound like way more mature than 10. And it's not something too significant, it's just it felt that was the only aspect that stood out for me as being a bit unrealistic, because most 10-year-olds would not have like such kind of insights like Annie did. But there are some kids who are gifted and precocious, so we can give it a pass as well. Another thing about the book that I really liked is the themes that it deals with. When you get to understand like why the house is being haunted, who has died in the house, which I will not give you any spoilers, but that really like pulls all the pieces together and makes you feel like this was a complete story that did not leave any loose ends. And I really appreciate books that do that. I do not like leaving something open-ended or figuring out like my own answers to this. Another aspect of it is I really could tell that the author did their research when it comes to paranormal stuff, because it is really hard striking a balance between something that's supernatural and something that is scientific. And the author tries to make sure, even with the characters who are actually like scientists and researchers, or like who have their own understanding of these paranormal stuff that are happening, it really tries to like balance between something that could actually happen in real life and something that is completely like supernatural and there for the creative effect of it. I know it must have taken a long time to figure that out. Finally, I think like overall this book was incredible. I really enjoyed reading it. I would recommend it to anyone who craves those like psychological horrors or thrillers or books that are comprehensive. that have like different genres mixed in together and elements of different things mixed in together, and they want a book that is a real page turner but not too fast paced. Someone Died in My House is for you. I will leave the link to buy the book in the description below, and do let me know how you feel about it once you've read it in the comments below.